yourself and how you came about writing Meiku.
So I'm Bibi Lucille. I have been an actor for kind of as long as I can remember and started writing in 2020. And the first thing I ever wrote was a play called Meiku, which is a one-woman show about a woman who tries to turn all her Tinder dates vegan as like a form of activism. And came up with the idea with my cousin Anastasia Bunce, who directed it. So the pair of us just kind of took it around London touring and then went to the Edinburgh Fringe. And now we've made a short film of it, which will hopefully be done in autumn. Yeah.
And what was your inspiration behind Meiku?
So the inspiration behind it is mainly the fact that I've been really passionate about veganism for like 9 or 10 years now. And I really wanted to kind of tell a story that promotes veganism, but not in a way that puts people off or makes people feel like they're being preached to. So I thought it might be kind of interesting to have, a really sort of passionate, interesting, humorous, messy character that people can really relate to and understand. And because most people do feel like really passionate about certain causes, but feel like they're sort of fighting against a really indifferent society. So I feel like she could be really relatable in that way, and especially like adding humor. Humor really just like it gets people's walls down. You feel like you can trust the other person. It bonds you to the audience. So when there's actually the message kind of comes up, it feels like it's not being done in a really kind of aggressive way. It's being done in a kind of safe space. And more of the actual idea of her like trying to convince all these men to go vegan was my cousin's idea, because we were talking about how every boyfriend I've had I've tried to turn vegan, and just thought that in itself was like a really funny concept, that I thought I was being a real martyr by turning men vegan.
And what are some strategies that you've implemented in the film to turn people vegan?
Mainly the humor. The humor is definitely the main aspect, I think. So when she's kind of like spouting all these facts and figures to men about why they should be vegan, it's done in like such a light-hearted kind of humorous way that you almost don't really realize that the facts are kind of sinking in a bit. So I think that was the main kind of like strategy, but also I wanted it to just be entertaining and fun and interesting and relatable. Like you're following someone you relate to, rather than just having something that's trying to get a message across. So it's a story in itself, and yeah, just entertaining.
And when is Meet Cute being released?
Hopefully in autumn this year, the short film. And then I think we'll use that to try and leverage it to create more. I mean, the dream was always to have like a series of it, but who doesn't want their play to become a TV show? So I think we're going to look at different avenues, maybe a feature film, whatever we can do to kind of make sure the entire story is being told, because it was great as a theatre play, but it's really hard to kind of keep the momentum of keep putting it on. And once a play is done, it kind of disappears into the ether, like there's kind of no record of it. So it would be really nice to have it as a tangible film.
And from the parts that you filmed so far, what is something that you think you would want to improve within the film?
I guess because we had big dreams for like location and these fancy restaurants and bars, but we had to work with a minimal budget, so we had this one location that we had to make it look like 3 different places. So that was definitely a little bit challenging. And then I think it's difficult as well that because with a limited budget, we were kind of pulling favours from people and just banking on collaboration and friends out of just the kindness of their own heart to help out. So I think it would have been nice to kind of compensate them for their time and their talent and their work. But hey, you can't always wait for that kind of stuff to make things that you're passionate about.
What sort of audience are you targeting with the
I feel like the audience we're gonna get is so different to the audience we were aiming for. In terms of, I think it'll attract um, vegan people because they'll be interested because it's like, kind of about veganism. But we do want to. I think the demographic in terms of age is probably like 18 to 40. And obviously, we want to kind of like spread the message. So hopefully, it'll reach people who aren't vegan yet or thinking of going vegan and just want to like know a bit more about it, or yeah, so that would be ideal. But it's kind of it's for anyone and everyone that's interested.
Is there a trailer available of the film?
Yes, there is a trailer on YouTube and on Instagram.
What's the duration of the film?
It's 10 minutes, so it's condensed because the play started as this 10-minute stand-up bit, so it was kind of like a condensed story in itself. And then we thought with making the short film version, we could just get that 10 minutes again because it's kind of, yeah, it's his own little story and it wraps up at the end. So yeah.
What are 3 things you would implement to turn people vegan?
The only people I have turned vegan have been boyfriends, which have just basically like consisted of arguments that go on for months. But I feel like with anything, I think if I was in another position where someone was trying to tell me something, like, for a really long time, I found it really hard to give up fast fashion and like clothes, knowing that, I knew that the fast fashion industry is like horrible, but I don't know what it was. There was just something where my selfishness took over more than like a knowing what it was about. So I think the things that really helped me change were really putting a face to the people that are suffering from my actions. So there were mainly like videos on TikTok, like documentaries, and yeah, essentially like really understand like the empathy of the people who are suffering. And like there's that film Blood Diamond that completely put me off. Well, not that I could ever afford loads of diamonds, but I wouldn't ever want to possess a diamond because of the fact that that film really made you empathize and understand what these people are going through. So I do think that media, documentaries, stories, films are the best way to kind of show people that animals are suffering, that people are suffering in the environment. So that's the first one. 2 others, I think convenience is a huge thing. So if plant-based options are more convenient, that's a massive way to get people to shift. Because I think more people would want to be vegan or vegetarian, but it's just inconvenient for them because they could pick up quite easily just a sandwich from Pret and not have to worry about whether it's like vegan or not. And then the third one is kind of a ripple effect. It's when people around you are doing something, so you're kind of more influenced just purely because of the fact it's kind of like exposure therapy. So the more you're kind of like around people who are talking about it or interested in veganism, the more likely you are to be like, oh, maybe I'll give it a go and like do meatless Mondays or something.
And how would you want to incorporate your brand in the film, since it also supports veganism?
Yeah, it's hard because they're such different projects in the way that Meiku is about a messy, slightly insane woman who is like desperate to just make a change, whereas because Bibi Lucille is kind of like couture fashion mixed with art, it has a much like gentler, kind of softer tone about the entire project. Um, so I think I would find it hard to merge the two, unless it was something like what we spoke about maybe having, just one of the dresses in one of the scenes. But I think it's hard. The only link there is just that it kind of came from my mind. But I think I'm still confused as to how I would mesh the two together. Because I maybe would keep them as separate projects and not try and like force them together too much. But having, yeah, like a dress in the film or
Did you want to maybe create a dress that's inspired by the film?
my God, potentially. I don't know if I think because the brand is based on artworks, I think it might be a bit random to have one based on a film. And I think as the main character Lena, she kind of wears like kind of weird outfits, like bright red trousers and this like puffer jacket. So it's I don't know how nice a dress would come out if it was like based on her style. Because I think I'm quite happy with the way the Bibi Lucille brand kind of is now with like the art and everything. So I don't know if I want to take away the attention from that. But who knows? I mean, anything could happen.
If you were to target a global audience, how would you adapt Meet Cute to cater for that audience?
Probably like different subtitles. I guess that's quite an easy answer. Yeah, I think yeah, subtitles probably to get it out and having dubbed voices and everything. I think that's usually, I guess, the way it goes.
So you have also incorporated silver fabrics in your dresses. So it could be that one of the characters in the film, rather than
It being her,
yeah,
potentially. Yeah, it's quite. I think it's hard to.
you could have a date where you're wearing one of your Bibi Lucille dresses and the scene is in a very posh location.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea because there is a scene where she does try and act like way fancier than she actually is and put on this kind of persona that she definitely doesn't have. Um, in trying to convince this businessman guy that she's really a classy woman, a very valuable woman. So, yeah, one of the dresses could definitely be there.
What led you to name the film Meet Cute?
It was actually my uncle's idea. So I was coming up with the worst names in history and sending them to my cousin, and she was going, "Yeah, maybe not." And then my uncle's written. Well, he's an actor and he's written as well. So he was like, "Why don't you have?" Because it's kind of like romance, like a meet cute, where people in rom coms like bump into each other, and it's called a meet cute. But then you spell it MEAT, so it's kind of a silly pun. Um, but yeah, I was like, that's genius.
Is there anything specific you'd like to tell everybody about Meet Cute?
I think something specific would be it's that to give it a chance that it's not what you would expect. Because I think the way I talk about it, I definitely make it sound like it's vegan propaganda, but it is like an entertaining story, and it's got so many more like elements to it. And yeah, to just try it. It's only 10 minutes of their time.
Where do you plan on releasing the film?
Well, we're going to do the classic film festival round and then probably to YouTube. I think we were kind of toying with the idea of using it as part of a pitch to try and get commissioning. I think because the TV industry is suffering so much from like COVID and the strikes it would almost be like the impossible task trying to get something commissioned in the next like 2 years. So I think it would be good just to, after film festivals, just get it out there on a public platform and release it to the world.
From the people who have watched the film so far, what has their feedback been?
It's been fairly positive. I mean, it's been friends and family that I've been like, what do you think? And obviously they're going to be Nice. So it'll be interesting to see what like strangers think about it. But yeah, general feedback's just been like, yeah, it's funny, well paced. I mean, we had an editor, Bruna Pius, who's like a genius, and she's an editor at Warner Brothers, so she just because I feel like editing is like it's make or break for a film. So the fact that I mean, we're really good friends anyway, so I think she kind of understood that kind of the humor and the pacing, and she's in the play. So that was like massively helpful in just getting across like the humor and the pacing. So that's been good feedback so far.
What's the ideal location you'd like to film Meet Cute? Different vegan restaurants.
Yeah, that was the aim when we kind of were gunning for a bigger budget. In my head, we were kind of like looking at locations, got in touch with loads of vegan restaurants, but I think it was tricky because they were London-based restaurants, so it would actually be a bit of a loss for them, no matter what we were offering. It wouldn't have made sense for them to like close the entire restaurant just for like a couple of kids to film in and lose business. So it was really hard getting a vegan location. Um, but ideally, it would have been like a busy bar, loads of extras, like a vegan restaurant for one of the scenes. Um, yeah, lots of ideas there, but I think with the budget, we were just like, right, we've got to condense this, we just got to get creative. And we ended up filming in Quester's Theatre in their bar because gosh, I did acting classes there since I was like 5 years old. So and they're kind of like just quite nice there and chilled out and gave it for a very discounted price. So I feel like with any sort of film, especially, you've got these big ideas of like how it's going to look. But I mean, as you know as well, with the silver lining, it ends up just costing more and more and more than you think, and it's kind of hard to keep it, you know, keep it low budget. But yeah, get creative with it. We just had to do what we could.
Would you open your own vegan restaurant?
Yeah, why not? If I had the time. um, Potentially, if somebody else managed it, potentially. I feel like so many good vegan restaurants. I'd be like, what would make this one different? But yeah, who knows? I wouldn't say no to anything. Sometimes, maybe. It's not true. Yeah, maybe.
And you've also released, well, you're planning to release a song very soon. So what was
How
the
did you know?
inspiration behind that song?
Well, so my dad is a blues musician, so I've just been raised on blues. Um, but I was always kind of, I mean, he really helped me try and, you know, make my own songs and make my own music. But I think I always felt very insecure about my voice or my sort of talent in the music area. Whereas with acting, I felt just way more like it was my comfort zone. Um, so I kind of just never pursued it. And I still now feel quite insecure about my own abilities, but I think obviously with your help, finding people who understand the production side, can do all the kind of the work that I have just no talent in, which is producing. So I think now that that's like in place, it's so nice to be able to just do the very basic melody of like the song and the singing, and then send it off for someone to actually make it into a song. Um, but I wanted to kind of keep to the blues theme, and because it's kind of, you don't get a lot of like blues artists nowadays and mixing like blues and pop. I mean, Hosier does it obviously so well. But it's just a genre I think it would be so nice to have more of.
And is there a specific story you're trying to tell with your entire album?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's hard not to fall into the thing of always talking about love because, like, or, you know, how you feel in terms of like romantic relationships, because that's always the thing that causes just insane amounts of like emotion and craziness. So I kind of wanted it to be a bit more like you can interpret it however, you know, you can hear it in the way that you want to hear it or relate it to whatever you're going through. Like, I think with the Addicted song, I was like, this could be interpreted as like an addiction to, you know, a person, or maybe like, you know, it mentions like alcohol and stuff and how that can, you lose your memory when, you know, the next morning and you're thinking about like all the mistakes you made if you were like really drunk. So, and then another kind of layer of that is there are a couple of songs that, I mean, haven't been produced yet, but ideas of having like either biblical references or stuff about like Greek mythology, again in the way that like Hosier talks about like Orpheus and Greek gods and these like incredible stories, and then alongside that the incredible music. I think that's really inspiring. And my mum gave me a book called Faustus, which has like all these amazing mythology poems and epic poems to kind of put into lyrics. So I think I'd love to do that if I could pull it off. But yeah, easier said than done.
So we're going to be hearing your songs on Billboard. Top 10 charts.
Yes, exactly. I'll be on number one for at least 10 years.
Now, there's the film, you as an actor, the music album, and your fashion brand. How would you want how would you want to be seen by the public? And regarding there's all these different blends.
Yeah. It's a funny one, that. I think it's something that I remember as a kid, I always wanted to be seen as this very angelic figure of like, I was really obsessed with like Marilyn Monroe and Audrey Hepburn, and they were kind of these perfect women that could do no wrong, and they always looked good, and they were always very softly spoken. And then lately, I think in my mid-20s, when stuff like Fleabag came out and I May Destroy You, and there were these, you know, interesting, flawed women who were kind of like a bit selfish but had this incredible sense of humor, but also had a really good heart, and like they were humans rather than the angelic figures I kind of always admired. And that totally shifted the way I wanted to approach like writing and now music and everything, because it's a mix of these two parts of me where, you know, I want to kind of appear perfect, but then also now I really admire the women that are not, you know, that are more human. So I think it's a tricky one with writing. I love the human aspect of it, and then with the clothing brand, it would, I guess, because that's more about like art and culture, that maybe, even though I don't know, it's hard to pick one persona when you're interested in so many different things, like blues and then art and then comedy. So I don't know, I find it really hard to pick one lane, but maybe it's okay to be loads of different things.
I guess it would be more how you blend all of that together.
Yeah. I mean, because they're so different, should they be blended, or can they just exist as their own things. I guess in the way that like Charlie Brooker, who wrote Black Mirror, he does comedy and then he does Black Mirror, and you don't mesh the two projects, but you know that he's the guy behind it. And then like Donald Glover as well, he does music, but then he acted in Community and he does like writing. And so those projects are all separate, but you know that he is this guy that's kind of doing all these different things. So yeah, I think I'll keep charging ahead with just whatever's interesting, whatever's a good project, to just run with it without worrying how it blends into everything else. Because most projects won't necessarily, they kind of exist as themselves rather than having to mesh with every single other thing you've done. And it keeps things interesting.
You've also added silver fabric to your clothing line. What was the reason behind that?
Well, before I met you, I didn't know anything about like EMFs. I'm still absolutely clueless on the whole thing. But I think because anything is possible, right? So if this does help, which, you've spoken about like studies and the fact that, in Paris, there's been a school that's trying to prevent it. May as well have it as an option, because it's one of those things where if it's something people are worried about, you do have to ease those worries. And it's important to make sure people feel comfortable. So if they feel comfortable, if there's an option to have like the silver slip dress and something that's easily like something that they could easily put under whatever garments they want to buy, it kind of caters to those people as well, so that they feel safe, So that's a massive thing. It's just making sure people are kind of happy if they want to buy your products.
Bibi Lucille is one of the world's first couture brands to incorporate silver fabric in garments for their customers. How does that make you feel?
Yeah, it's good. Like I say, like it's important to make people feel safe and make everyone feel seen. And it's clearly an issue that people are worried about. So yeah, it's important to include everyone, just make it inclusive. So I think it's really nice to just make sure everyone's happy.
What are some more films that you would be showcasing very soon?
There is. Am I allowed to promote Silver Lining? Yeah, okay. So there's the Silver Lining, which we made together, and that is kind of a thriller about this woman who she's like the daughter of this CEO that runs this massive tech company, and she has these kind of ulterior motives about the products she's putting out, and a journalist who starts to be the first one to kind of uncover all the truths about these products, and how she kind of tries to warn the world about it. So that one should be released very soon. And then I'm also a writer on season 2 of The Stairs, which is a web series by Bruno Pius, who edited Meiku. And it's kind of like a fantasy, partly, it's got like some animation, and it's about this, and it's like comedy as well, this woman who gets a box that's supposed to be delivered to the 5th floor, and she's on the ground floor, so she's like, and the lift is broken. So she's like, great, I'm gonna have to climb the stairs and give my neighbor this box. And on every floor of the stairs is like a different world and a different genre. So one part's horror, another part is a sitcom comedy where there's like laughter in the background. And it's all like, she uncovers a lot about herself and her past. And then season 1 ends in a cliffhanger. So season 2, we're currently developing and writing it and seeing how, where it can go. And Bruno's already got an idea for how it all wraps up at the end, which is, of course, really clever because she is a genius. So I'm very excited for that. And so me and my friend Bella are writing a play to put in LA. It's Bella and Andrea, so it's written by the three of us. I don't know how much I'm allowed to say about that though. I might get in trouble. But we're really keen to put on it. It's a comedy, it's really entertaining, and Bella lives in LA, so it makes sense to kind of put it on there. So those are the projects at the moment. Always different stuff. Always good to keep yourself busy and entertained.
And how did you go into script writing?
Well, script writing, because with writing, I always loved doing it. Like, I would just write stories or little things on my laptop when I was younger. But I was so insecure about ever putting it out there because it felt like reading your diary to people. And then in 2020, when there was, acting work just dried up and there was nothing else doing, when I started Meiku with my cousin, it gave me the confidence that my writing actually could be seen by people and that people find, it's not just me that finds it really funny. So I think that gave me some confidence. And then going into like film and TV stuff, that's always been collaborating with people, which has been just so much fun as well. So that's kind of how I got into it. But Meiku was definitely the gateway to it all that just opened more doors.
And how are you finding acting and all of these different areas? Well, basically, you're an entrepreneur now.
Yeah. I love acting. It was the first thing I was ever really passionate about, and the only thing that I felt like I could kind of ironically really just be myself, because I was so shy and introverted and insecure that when I was acting, it's like all that stuff fell away. And I just felt like I could be whoever I wanted to be. I could just be silly and stupid and like not have to worry. And it kind of just opened up this new world, gave me confidence. And also just being immersed in like someone else's story. It's almost like you get to live like a million different lives in this one life that I have. So that was always the thing that was like this unwavering just love for it. But obviously the industry is really, really tough, and it's hard to get jobs. And then when you do get a job, it might not necessarily be a script that you really love, or it might be a really messy production. So it's really hard to kind of have a satisfying outlet for acting. And I think especially with lockdown and with the strikes, work has dried up even more. So it feels like the best way to kind of go forward is to write your own stuff, collaborate with people, make your own projects, because it gives you so much more creative control and so much more creative satisfaction than when you're kind of just waiting for your agent to ring you. And then I think with doing lots of other projects like the fashion and the music, I don't think I realised I could find creative outlets in these other things, but being able to actually look at other like industries, like look at art and be interested in art and be interested in clothes and music. I always had this weird thing in my head that if it wasn't just acting, I would like fail at it, which is obviously so not true. And I think it's this weird pressure put on you that you completely blindly believe when you're in your late teens and early 20s, where you just think this must be my life, otherwise I don't deserve it. But being able to have a creative outlet with lots of different projects is like really satisfying, and it keeps you kind of feeling excited about things and excited about life, and that's like really important.
And how would you measure the impact your films are having on people?
I think the way I measured the impact of Meiku was more talking with audiences afterwards and having discussions with them, and it was mainly kind of these really nice conversations where people would be like, "That's it's made me really think," and I've been cutting down on meat anyway, and then that would feel really like yes. Um, and then there's also like the classic critic reviews. If you get good reviews, over Edinburgh, it was so hard with reviews because it's hard to even get them in the first place, and then because you're constantly exhausted having to like keep the energy, it was hard to have like the kind of reviews we got during the London run. So those are the two sort of main ways that I've looked at feedback and how people feel about the play. Um, Audience reviews are just really important. Because there was that case with Fleabag where she famously was getting 3 stars and less by critics over Edinburgh, but audiences loved it. And she ended up selling out shows because everyone was like, you have got to go and see this show. So it's a funny one. I think audience reviews have far more of an impact than critic reviews sometimes.
How do you think Maya's character is developed in the film? And how were you able to portray her character?
Think at the beginning of the film, she's very much by the book. Like, she's really passionate about her job and keeping her boss happy. And then you would never I don't want to give away the ending. But essentially, you wouldn't expect her to be the kind of person who could really has that fire inside of her. And I think she's pushed and pushed and pushed to the point where she's so horrified by the indifference that Christina has to the rest of the world, that she acts slightly out of character. So without giving too much away, I think that there is that kind of progression there. And portraying it, I think, with any character I play, I kind of always inevitably bring parts of myself to it. So I think I kind of tapped into the fact that Maya is very curious and she's very by the book and very moral. I kind of brought my own ideas of that and how I've been like that in the past or present, and been very much like, this is how things should be, this is the moral way to go. So I kind of fused those two. And I think that's how I kind of approached her characters. Because it makes you also feel just more comfortable in your body when you're acting, is when you can kind of just bring parts of yourself to it, rather than trying to completely morph yourself into someone else. It can seem awkward and a bit weird, unless you're like Daniel Day-Lewis and spend 6 months hiding from the world and pretending to be someone else.
All right, thank you, Bibi.
Thank you, Devansh. This was wonderful.